spending 2 weeks with 280 other students at Summit Ministries Worldview Camp at Bryan College in Dayton, Tennessee. At Summit, I spent a total of 55 hours in lectures and open forums alone, and that's not even counting the hour of small groups I had every night. I think most of you all have probably heard of Summit and what it is, but for those who don't know what Summit is, here's what they say from their website. Summit is a student worldview conference that is an intensive 2-week retreat designed to teach students how to analyze the various ideas that are currently competing for their hearts and minds. And a quick history of how Summit got started is Summit was started in 1962, 50 years ago this year, by Dr. David Nobel. His goal in starting Summit was to ground Christians in their faith, enabling them to face things that they would confront at college. Today, Summit is viewed as one of the foremost leaders in training Christians in apologetics, worldview analysis, and social engagement. Summit hosts 10 two-week student worldview conferences every summer at college campuses, including Bryan College in Dayton, Tennessee, Cedarville University in Cedarville, Ohio, and Liberty University in Lynchburg, Virginia, as well as at their headquarters in Colorado Springs, Colorado. When I found out I was going to Summit, I was very excited. I read everything I could find online about it to know what to expect when I got there. Going into it, I sort of thought that I would go and it would be an encouragement to me, but I didn't think that it would have as big of an impact on me as it would on somebody who had never even heard of the word worldview before. But after the first day of sessions, I was so much more excited because I was hearing and learning so much more than what I anticipated. My experience at Summit was above and beyond my expectations. The first few nights I'd lie awake for an hour or so after lights out, just with my mind racing through the things that we had discussed in the sessions, and just being so excited for what I was going to hear the next day. An average day at Summit looked something like this. I would wake up at 6 o'clock in the morning and would have breakfast at 7:15. After breakfast, our session started at 8:05, and we'd have 4 sessions in the morning. Each session was about 45 minutes long, and sometimes we'd have like a 1 or 2 minute to 5 minute break in between the sessions. After our morning session, we would have lunch at noon, and after lunch, we'd have an afternoon session from 1:15 to 2:30. After the afternoon session, we had free time from 2:30 to 5:15, with dinner at 5:15. After dinner, we had open forums with the speakers at 6 o'clock, and they were anywhere from 45 minutes to about an hour long. That's just where the students would go and ask the speakers questions, things from their sessions, or even things that weren't even related to what they had talked about in their sessions. After the open forum, we'd have evening worship before our last session of the day, and the evening worship in our last session went from 7 o'clock to 9 o'clock in the evening, and then after that we'd have small groups that went from 9:45 for about 45 minutes to an hour long, and then after that we'd have to be in bed with lights out by 11 o'clock. So it was a really long day. I think I totaled it up, and it was about 6 hours a day in sessions alone. So in the afternoon when we weren't in sessions, we had about 3 hours of free time, and there was usually a game or activity that was planned. Some of the things I did was I went on one Walmart trip to get some things I needed. All the students went to Fort Bluff, which is a summer camp with cabins, volleyball courts, water slide, and a blob. I went hiking with some of my friends, and we found a waterfall and did all that. So I also participated in Dayton Day, which is whoever wanted to during the free time would go, and we'd all go in a group and go to downtown Dayton and clean up one of their parks. So we picked up trash and sticks in some of the parks, and we got, I think, 15 and a half bags of trash and 2 huge piles of sticks. We cleaned up that. So, and like half the students from Summit voluntarily went and participated in that. I also went with some of my friends and took a walk to downtown Dayton one day. We went to a local museum where the Scopes trial was held. We went to the general store, to a music store, and just walked around, took pictures with the statues, and just saw downtown Dayton. Also, I spent some time with my friends in a music room underneath the auditorium where like one friend played the piano, one played the guitar, so they play the piano and guitar together and just singing and things like that. And my roommate even showed me some things to play and practice on the guitar. Also, free time was the best time to call home because you didn't have anything to do then, so that's when I usually did that. One of my favorite things about Summit was the evening worship every night before we started our last session. Josh Bales, who's a worship leader at a Presbyterian church in Orlando, Florida, led it, and he always started us off by having us recite either the Apostles' Creed or the Nicene Creed. And at the end of the creed, we'd always sing the doxology. And that was one of my favorite parts, is when all the students were together singing the doxology. We didn't sing with any music, so it's 280 students just singing with their voices. The rest of the time we would sing old hymns or newer hymns, and we would recite some prayers together, and as well as reading scriptures responsively. It was a tremendous encouragement and a blessing to me. We had a total of 21 speakers at Summit, and some that you may recognize include John Stonestreet, Sean McDowell, son of Josh McDowell, Dale Tackett, Jennifer Marshall, who's the Director of Domestic Policy Studies at the Heritage Foundation in Washington, D.C., Scott Klusendorf, Ken Turner, and Jeff Myers are just a few. At Summit, it's really hard to pick a favorite speaker because they're all so good, but most people at camp, when you'd ask them, could pick their top 5 or top 3, but not one single person. My top 5 would probably have to be John Stonestreet, who's an author, a speaker, and he's also worked with Summit Ministries and the Chuck Colson Center for years. Scott Klusendorf, who's the president of Life Training Institutes, and he travels to the United States and Canada training pro-life advocates how to defend their views. Dr. Ken Turner, he's the professor of Bible at Bryan College and mainly focuses in the Old Testament. Dr. Dale Tackett, whom most of you would know from the Truth Project, and Dr. Jeff Myers, who's the new president of Summit Ministries. In the 2 weeks at Summit, we went over dozens and dozens of topics, and some of the things we went over included abortion, apologetics, leadership, Marxism, arts, culture, economics, feminism, homosexuality, humanism, Islam, law, meta-narrative, naturalism, origins, science, philosophy, postmodern worldviews, and many more. In fact, this is my notebook that I took notes in from Summit, and each one of the tabs is a speaker and a different topic. So there's a whole bunch in here, and some I didn't even mark. So, and also this is my Summit notebook that they gave us when we got there. It had notes for all of the speakers, a lot of their notes, things I highlighted and everything like that in it. But I did most of my notes in the other notebook. There are a lot of things that I learned that I could share with you, but it'd take too long, so I just chose 3. One of the things that I learned at Summit that really stuck out to me was in our very first session with John Stonestreet. In his first session, Mr. Stonestreet made the statement that no information is neutral. Information has ideas. And also, every cultural expression communicates worldview ideas. This was a big thing because, as he pointed out, everyone has a worldview whether they know it or not. And we need to be careful to evaluate the worldviews, the information and ideas we're taking in, because if we don't, we'll accept whatever worldviews are communicated to us through things like television shows, books, music, or things we see on the computer. The second thing that really stood out to me was in Scott Klusendorf's sessions on pro-life. He didn't present the defense of the life of the unborn from the Bible alone. He had 2 points that he used for his case. The first one was what is the unborn, and the second, what makes humans valuable? Is or is not the unborn human? He says if the unborn is not human, then we can abort it, and it's no different than pulling a tooth. He went on later to give us 3 questions to help in a conversation with someone who doesn't support the pro-life position, and those are, what did you mean by that? How did you come to that conclusion? And have you considered the implications of your view? He had 3 purposes with this question, or with these questions. The first purpose was to gather information so you can accurately understand your critic's view. The second purpose was to reverse the burden of proof from you to the other person. So instead of you having to prove why you believe what you believe, the other person has to prove what they're saying is true. And then the third purpose was to show that your critic must pay too high a price to hold his view. Mr. Klutzendorf's sessions were extremely helpful in and practical in understanding the defense of the pro-life position. One thing that was a really big theme throughout all the sessions was the idea of the meta-narrative, or the big picture of the Bible, and also how we're supposed to read the Bible. Dr. Ken Turner dealt with these issues specifically in multiple sessions. Dr. Turner dealt with understanding the meta-narrative of the Bible as the creation, fall, and redemption, and how we're to see this throughout the Bible. He also dealt with how to read the Bible, and Dr. Turner's points on how to read the Bible were first, that the Bible was meant to be read in large portions at a time. Second, that we need to be committed to the author's original intent when we read the passages. Thirdly, that we need to understand the historical context, the details and occasion and purpose for which the passage was written. Fourth, that we need to understand the literary context, the structure and the genre of the book, like whether it be prophetic, poetry, or something like that. And also need to understand theological context, and finally we need to read the parts in light of the whole. There were two things that I really appreciated at Summit. The first was the accessibility of the speakers. All of the speakers were fantastic and really liked to engage with the students. During our breaks in between sessions, many of the students would go and stand around the speaker and just ask him or her questions, or just listen to the questions other people had. At one point, after one of our sessions, Dr. Tackett stood up there with me, one other girl, another person, and just for an hour was just answering this one girl's questions after one of the sessions were over. And also, the speakers were very accessible at meals and loved to sit with the students and talk. For example, I was able to eat at a table with Dr. Tackett, Mr. Klutzendorf, Dr. Turner, and Miss Marshall. And it was fantastic just to hear their stories and to hear the answers to questions people had for them. The second thing that I appreciated was the time we had every night with our small groups. We were all assigned to a small group, and a small group had an average of 6 to 7 people in it. My small group leader's name was Allison, and she was fantastic. She genuinely was interested in us and would have one-on-ones with us at meals where it just me and her who would, at lunch or something, we'd go sit at a table by ourselves and just talk for the hour and get to know each other better. In our small group time, we would spend our time discussing what we thought of the day's sessions. We'd also discuss a little bit of what we liked, what we agreed with and disagreed with, things that stuck out to us, and things like that. Allison would also discuss a little bit of what we should expect the next day and what we need to be listening for. This was a real encouragement to me to get to know the other girls and also to hear different views on things we had talked about, because our small group was very diverse, people from different backgrounds and different experiences, so not everybody agreed with the things the speakers said, and not everybody had the same ideas on it. My time at Summit was probably the most important 2 weeks of my life. It helped me to better understand the beliefs and worldviews I will be and am being faced with. It helped me understand how to engage with someone who has different beliefs than I do on multiple topics, as well as having met some people I hope to know for the rest of my life. There's already been a couple times where I've heard something on the TV on like a commercial or something, and I've been like, oh, we talked about that at Summit, or we talked about the worldviews behind that and what they're trying to communicate through that. In fact, on the Summit Facebook page, we had a whole bunch of people who were watching the Olympics, and this one commercial came on for this new show about like the new family or something, and they're all these people are posting, did you see this commercial, and everything like that. So you can already sort of see the effects of how going to Summit is already starting to affect me. I think it'd be amazing if every young adult could go to Summit, because I think it's important that they understand what they will be faced with in the world and that they're prepared to engage the world for Christ. I'm done, so if anybody has any questions.
She made it. So does anybody have any questions then about the Summit?
I have a question for you.
Okay.
What did you find to be the most challenging, or not challenging, the most edifying session there?
The pro-life was very helpful with Dr. Quissendorf, and actually I think Dr. Tackett's was the most edifying, because he was talking about how we're to be called us to be fruitful, and how we aren't supposed to just support, like, give money to some organization and let them do the job and let the professionals do the job, but rather God's called us to do it, and we're supposed to get our hands dirty and do that. So his session was probably the most edifying.
About coming back and seeing all this craziness centered around Chick-fil-A, did you really see the battling? Yeah,
and we talked about that at Summit too.
Now, was any of that going on while you were at Summit? Or, I guess they had.
Yeah, it was a little bit, because Mr. Stoneshoot mentioned it a few times, and how we need to support them and things too. Yes?
What's a meta-narrative?
The meta-narrative is the big picture of the Bible, and understanding like God's plan throughout the whole of the Bible, and seeing the big picture of it instead of just like one little part of it. Yeah.
How about the whole original intent? Is there any, can you expound on that a little bit about, is that did he see that as a real problem today, that people are not?
Yeah, he saw it as like people reading into the text and not like understanding what the text is actually saying. So he saw it as people coming with their own ideas and trying to force it into the text, and how we need to read it with what the author was actually saying.
Did you know anybody that was going to be at Summit before you went, or was everybody a stranger to you at first and then you just made new friends?
I had never met anybody personally. In fact, the night before, I posted on my Facebook page, I'm a teenager living for Jesus, and there was one girl on there who was going. So we met the night before at like 1:30 in the morning on Facebook. So we knew that they were going to be there, so that made us both a little bit more comfortable. And she was Reformed, and so it was just awesome too. So.
Oh, that's good.
You want to tell a little bit about where you stayed and kind of the accommodations and stuff?
We stayed in Bryan College's dormitories. We didn't have, like, the rooms were actually very big. They were really nice, they were bigger than I thought they were going to be, but they didn't have a bathroom in the room or adjoined to it, so you had, like, all the girls in one hall sharing two bathrooms, one at one hall and one at the other. And it was a good thing, because one of the doors had a room number on it, and everybody thought it was a room and not a bathroom, so me and my roommate found that out. So we got to use that when hardly anybody was in that one. So I think, yeah.
What was the age span, like the youngest to the oldest of the students?
I thought the youngest was 16, but there were like 3 or 4 15-year-olds up to college age, which was probably about 22 or 23.
So anywhere between.
Mm-hmm. Which they said they don't have a cutoff age, so really anybody could go who wanted to, but if you're adult, they have an adults conference as well as student conferences, and if you're a teacher, they have educators conferences as well. That's just like Summit. So.
Talk about the breakdown between public schoolers, homeschoolers.
So the first day we got there, they had us all sing in the room for the first session. They asked everybody, all right, who's a public schooler? And if you were in the room, it'd be like these 4 raising their hand, who's public schooler? Who goes to private school, it'd be like another 4 people raising their hand. Then if they asked who's homeschooler, the majority, it'd be like everybody else in the room raising their hand who's homeschooler. So they were like, finally, for once, homeschoolers are the majority. So it was true. So everybody you met just about was homeschooled. So.
And they were all pretty normal.
Oh, everybody was normal. It's like, I wouldn't know you were homeschooled, but yeah.
Now tell us the dates. It's 2 weeks. Is it like Like 2 completely weeks, like?
It was July 15th to August, no, July 28th. It was like one day short of 2 weeks, but you stay over the night and leave the next morning, so it was basically 2 weeks. Yes.
I know with Worldview Academy, they have the parents come in for the last session. Do they also, do that as well?
Well, the last session was before noon, and they had the graduation that evening, so if the parents wanted to, they could stay for the session, but they just stay there for a few hours before the end, so they could come if they wanted to.
But they had a whole
So the
graduation
timing was just sort
ceremony.
of off for that. Yeah.
And how much does it cost for 2 weeks?
$995.
About half the students there, though, got some type of financial scholarship, though. That's kind of a big thing, so,
Yeah, I forgot.
Now, is that their
She said
summit
that
or
was.
from church or what?
No, I think it's through Summit that they've got financial,
Like,
yeah.
Yeah.
Is David Noble still actively involved in?
He just retired this year, and Jeff Myers is taking over the presidency, but I think he's still speaking at Summit and things. I know he did in Colorado, but I don't know what all he's doing. He didn't at ours though.
I'm curious as to makeup of the other people who were there. I assume they came from maybe all over the Southeast.
They came from all over. There's in fact one guy from Mexico. There was one guy from New Mexico. People from Oklahoma, Ohio. They're really from all over the country. So not even just the Southeast, but I was very surprised by that. There were people from that far that came.